show you how to make the gnome tag from Kreative Kiwi, and I'm going to turn it into a keyring. For this I'm going to be using a 4x4 hoop, 2 layers of cutaway stabiliser, masking tape, scissors. I've got a selection of threads and one with a matching bobbin, which I will use right at the end to attach the backing. And I've got my vinyl and mylar cut to size, and I've also cut out a little strap for my keyring piece. There's a link to this design in the video description along with lots of other information, so please do take the time to have a look. Start off by hooping your 2 layers of cutaway stabiliser. And then we're going to pin around the top edge of our hoop, and that will stop the stabiliser from being pulled down between the 2 pieces. So take your pin, rest it on top of the inner hoop frame, push it through, bring it back round and back through the stabiliser. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides. Load a thread that's going to match your vinyl into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline. I'm using red for this so that you can see what I'm doing. Place your vinyl over the outline. There's a little line here, and that's for you to show you where to align your hanger or your tag to turn it into a keyring later on. So place your vinyl over the outline and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2. This step is completely optional. If you don't want to use mylar, it doesn't matter. You can skip this bit. If you are using mylar, place your mylar over the outline that you've just stitched and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. From now on it's just a series of colour changes until we get to the end. So load whichever colour you want for his hat and slippers into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. I'm going with green on this. Load your thread for his beard into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 5. Load your thread for the background of his signboard into your machine. I'm going with white on this one. And then you're going to stitch round number 6. The next thing to stitch out is the word humbug. If you want to add your own text, now is the time to do so. Okay, so I've come out of my file, and let's say this is my gnome for the minute. I need to find out where the centre is in this area where I want to add different text. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of masking tape and just place it roughly where I think the middle is. Take something with a straight edge. I've got a piece of card here, and then you're going to go diagonally from diagonal corner to diagonal corner with it, so that you can then mark the centre. So draw a line, and then you're going to do the same on the opposite diagonal. there. So when it comes to setting up or comes to stitching out the wording that we're going to add, you need the needle at rest to fall right in the middle of that cross. If it does, you'll know that your text is going to be perfectly centered on the area that you're going to stitch. Now leave your tape on there for now. So first thing you're going to do is come right out of your file. So that you get back to the main panel on your embroidery machine. Now every machine is going to be different, so if you're not sure, look it up in your user manual. So you're going to go to the main screen on your embroidery machine, and you want to find an icon that looks like this, which means that that's your text fonts for your machine, and you're going to press that, and then you're going to choose your font, and I'm going to choose this one. Then we need to put our text in. So you've got capital letters and small letters, numbers, and a whole host of other different symbols if your machine has these. So at the moment I'm on the capital letters, so that's fine. I'm going to press the K, and after the first letter I'm going to choose which size font that I want, large, medium or small. It's going to have to be small for this. And then I can put the rest of my letters in. If I wanted small letters, I'd push that one and choose those. I'm just going to stick with the capital letters for a minute so that you can see what I'm doing. So A and Y. So that's now ready to stitch as far as creating the text is going. So I'm now going to press Embroidery. And that brings me to this panel here. Next we have to set up the position that we want our text to be stitched in. To position our needle, we're going to use these arrows here, left and right, up and down, until we get it in the needle in the centre of the cross that we made on the masking tape. So I'm going to jog my needle now. And remember, you need the needle to be where the centre of your text is going to fall first off. So I'm now going to drop my needle to see where it falls, and I'm going to press this button here, and that will drop the needle right down. So I can see that it's not quite centred, so I'm going to push the needle button again to raise the needle, and then I'm going to jog the arrows up and to the left a little. And then I'm going to drop the needle again. I'm just going to move that thread out of the way. And that looks pretty spot on to me. It's as good as it's going to get. So now my needle is positioned ready for to stitch out my lettering. So I'm going to lift that. And I can now remove this piece of masking tape because it's no longer needed. All that remains now is to lower my foot and stitch out the wording. And I'm going to do it on here so that you can see exactly what's going on. You can actually do a test, set up a test like this before you actually stitch out onto your actual project. It saves making mistakes. So, you know, it's only a piece of stabiliser that I've stitched the stitch area onto, that's all. So I'm now going to stitch this. Okay, so let's take a look at this. It's nice and centered. It has got bobbin thread showing through, and that is because my machine was set up to stitch through several layers of, or 2 layers of vinyl and 2 layers of cutaway stabilizer. So the top tension for my thread was different, so it won't work on here. But when I put my hoop back into my machine to stitch it out for real, there won't be any bobbin thread showing. So it's a good way to do a test piece before you actually commit onto your actual project. So now all you need to do is stitch your wording out onto your project. Once you've done that, we can come out of here because we've finished with it. So let's hit return, delete, return, close, and it brings us back to the main panel. And we can now go into the USB key and pick our file up again. Now all I need to do is navigate back to where I left off and pick up from there. If you've stitched the name out, then you want to go beyond the texts I will show you. So I'm looking for the needle with a plus and a minus, and the 2 icons that look like a cotton reel, and these skip through the colours. So I'm going to now go to where the text is. As you've already stitched yours out onto your project, you're not going to want the text from the file, so then you pick up one after, the colour after, so you don't stitch out what's on the file on top of your own stitching. So I'm now going to go 1 forward, and now I'm going to pick up from where I left off, and it's as easy as that. If you're not adding your own, then make sure that you've got the right colour thread for the text loaded into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 7. Next is the frame around his signboard. I'm staying with red for this, but load whichever colour you want for that into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 8. The next round of stitching is the decorative top stitching over the board frame. So load whichever colour thread you want into your machine. I'm using metallics. Metallic threads are renowned for shredding, breaking, and just generally being a pain in the backside. But there are a few simple rules to follow, and that will give you a pain-free experience. The first one is to use a 90-14 top stitching needle. The reason being is that the eye is larger than on your 75-11, and therefore it reduces the friction as the thread goes through the eye. The second is to slow your machine down as slow as it will go. The third is to loosen your top thread tension in your machine settings. I usually run mine at -3 when I'm doing metallics. And the fourth one, which makes the biggest difference of all, is when you've got your metallic thread, normally when you put a spool on your machine, it comes off like this, which forms a twist in the thread. Rather than it twisting, you want it to come off straight like that. So you either use a thread stand, or you can make your own out of a few simple things that you'll have laying around the house. The first is to have a beaker, 3 rubber bands or some masking tape, and a pencil. So what you're going to do is, with your rubber bands, through the middle one, pop your beaker so that you've got 2 coming off the sides. Then thread your spool onto your pencil, and then pop the side bands over the edge at each end of the pencil, and this gives you a great little thread stand. I've got a bit of tape on the end just to hold it until I'm ready to stitch it. Now I would put this on the right hand side of my machine, and then I would run my thread between the two bobbin winder pieces and then just thread it as normal, and that allows the thread to feed freely and not get caught up on anything. So load whichever colour thread you want into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 9. There's the stitching. The next colour to be stitched is for the nose and the hands, so load whichever colour you want for those into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 10. I'm using flesh pink for this. We're now going to remove the excess mylar. So I've taken the tape off, and then you just tear it and it comes away. We're now going to add the tab and backing, so turn your hoop over. This little line that we had stitched right at the beginning is going to be our guideline, and you can use a little bit of ribbon, cord, anything, or if like me you're making a keyring, then I'm using a piece of vinyl that I've just cut into a strip. So I'm going to place this face down, and then I'm going to tape it in place. And it's right over the, well, it should be, right over where that little marker is. And I'm going to try and make sure that I've got it straight as well. So this is upside down so that when I add a snap or something to it, it folds over and it's up the right way. The backing goes on up the right way, and then you're going to tape it in place. And I'm going to tape that down just so that it doesn't get caught up and double back on itself. We're now going to stitch round number 11, and that's going to secure everything in place. You can either make a feature out of this stitching, in which case use a nice bright contrasting colour, or you can go for very subtle and use a thread colour to match your vinyl. It's entirely up to you. Whichever you do use a matching bobbin for this, because it's going to be seen on both sides of your work and you want it to be nice and neat. So our work's now ready to free from the hoop, and I've removed all pins and tape. Before I actually remove it, I just want to trim the excess vinyl around where my tab is, and it's easier to do it while it's in the hoop than it is out. At least you don't risk of cutting it off then. So I'm going to turn my hoop over, And where this tab is, I'm just going to trim down to the stitch line and then cut around. And I'm going to do the same on the front. Okay. I'm now going to free this from the hoop. And I'm going to trim up a little bit of the stabiliser so that it's not in the way as well. Taking care not to cut my tab, of course. Now going to trim this up, and we're going to cut on the red outer stitch line here. And that's our guideline for cutting to make it all nice and neat and even all the way round. So I'm going to take care around here, obviously. I'm going to go in the opposite way so that I can see what I'm doing. And you're going to cut on the line. To do is to add a snap, and that will complete my little loop. So I'm going to add a snap to the tab on my keyring. So I'm going to turn this over. For this I've got a pair of snaps. Now there's a male and a female part and a spiky button that goes with each. And I've got my setting tool, a sharp stabby tool for making a hole in my vinyl, and a chalk pen so that I can mark where I'm going to pierce. So I'm going to fold my tab down and decide where I want it to come to, and then I'm going to decide where I want to put my snap. So excuse me, I'm all fingers tonight. So I'm going to hold that down and then mark off where I'm going to make the hole. And I always find it easier to set the male first, because it's got a deeper cut and I can feel it better through my vinyl. So I'm going to take my sharp stabby tool and pierce where I've marked. And then I'm going to take the button and on the right side of the vinyl, push that through. And then I'm going to add the male onto the spike. And then I'm going to set it, and the button part goes into the black cup, and the the connecting part with the spike on the other side goes up inside there. So place it on in your tool, and when it's all seated correctly, just squeeze. And that's the first piece connected. So now I'm going to fold this over, turn it over to the other side, and because the male is a lot deeper, I can feel where I want to pierce. Just make sure that my strap lines up properly, and that's where it's going to go. So now you need to make sure that you get this on the right way. So this time I'm going to push the button through from the front as well, so that the female goes on the back and the male snaps down onto it. It's always good to have a dry run before you actually squeeze that trigger, because they're very difficult to get off once they're set. So once more, setting tool over both pieces and squeeze. And that's my tab. That's my tab done. Also our gnome finished. If you enjoyed this stitch along, if you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of new videos as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. You will find the link to this design and lots of other information in the video description below, along with links to how to do things.